Happy Sunday. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I'm never going to stop saying that. Please like and subscribe, share with whoever you think will be able to benefit. We're back with Timeless Talks with Telly. I'm Telly. That's the end of my name, Chantel Adana Agbro. People always spell my name wrong, but the end is Telle. I'm really ready to jump into today's topic, which is being vulnerable and showing vulnerability. Let's jump in. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to start with the definition, of course, but I really want to get into the meat of what being vulnerable is, what vulnerability looks like, and why it's so important. So, the dictionary definition of vulnerable and showing vulnerability is to be more susceptible, open to attack or harm, whether that be physically or emotionally. Now, I know that sounds like, why on earth would I ever want to be open and knowingly subject myself to harm, right? Physically, emotionally, in any kind of way. Let's really talk about it. When you're in a vulnerable state, when you're being vulnerable, you are open to really receiving and enjoying and understanding not only yourself, but the meaning of whatever situation you may be witnessing or going through. When you're open, you're able to let your guards down that you may have put up from being hurt in the past. When you're vulnerable, you're able to understand, you're able to move with compassion. When you're vulnerable, you're able to see the situation for what it is and not through a lens of being hurt or through a lens of your trauma. And that's the beauty, because that's where we get to understanding. That's where we can actually have a conversation about what's actually happening, what the root of the issue is, so we can actually get to resolving it instead of speaking from places of ego, pride, and blame. Some traits of a vulnerable person or someone who has vulnerability is being straightforward, being open, being honest, talking in a mellow tone, seeking to understand instead of wanting to be understood, right? Truly listening to the other party, being open and open-minded to the outcome or the possibility that the way you think or the way you see your perspective on a certain situation or a certain person may not be the case, because everything is not what it seems. Maybe it's deeper than what's on the surface, right? When you're open and you're willing, then you are able to actually heal. You're able to be honest about what's affected you, what didn't sit right with you, and how you could possibly move forward, how you could possibly set boundaries. One of the biggest misconceptions, and why I started this video saying that this is near and dear to my heart, because I'm an emotional, sensitive person, and in that vulnerability and in being able to know what I feel, knowing how to communicate it, though I don't always communicate in a timely manner or maybe for other people's standards, it is so important to be able to connect with why you feel a certain way. And it's so important to know how to navigate through that feeling. Most people see vulnerability as a weakness. If you show that you have any emotions, if you show that you're sad about something, if you show that something makes you angry, then that is a weakness. They're completely incorrect, because what the weakness is not being able to know what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. You'll never resolve whatever you really are feeling, right? When you're vulnerable and you're open and you're honest about how things made you feel, why things are coming up, what this may connect to in your past that has manifested in a way that it has in your adulthood, or however old you are now, then you're able to actually release yourself from it. Then you're able to free yourself from it. You see where the strength comes because of the knowledge. You know what you're feeling. You may not know why you're feeling it, but knowing what you're feeling is the doorway to connecting to why you're feeling it, because then you can ask yourself questions. I'm feeling this way. Why do I feel this way? When did this feeling start? When did I first think these things about myself? Or when did I first create an idea or the definition of this making me weak, or this making me feel a certain way, or me caring so much about what other people think, say, or do as it pertains to me and my life? Why did I begin to put so much weight on that? When did that happen? When did I begin to value and define my worth based off of what other people thought of me, or how other people saw me, or what other people didn't see in me? These are the questions that you can only ask yourself when you're vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable and you go off of thick skin and everything will just bounce off, that isn't human. I would also like to remind you that before we are humans in the flesh, as people see us, as we present, we are emotional beings, right? Even when you're mad, that's an emotion. Even when you're numb, it's still an emotion. It's a stagnant motion. You're almost in a trance, but it's still a state of rejecting emotion, right? Because you won't be numb forever, right? Eventually you will feel something someday when you allow yourself to really break free. But it's so important to be honest about the fact of what vulnerability can really do, how it can really heal, how it can really mend, why it's so important to say what's on your mind, say what's on your heart, why it's so important to listen to people when they're being open and honest, when they're speaking from a vulnerable place, and why it's so important not to discredit someone when they are being honest, just because you may not know how to, or just because when you were younger you were shot down, so that's how you operate in life. How did that work out for you? How did that work out for you as far as your relationships and the people you connect with genuinely? I'm not talking about what it looks like. I'm talking about how you actually feel at the end of the day, how you actually feel with the connections, and how you actually feel connected with yourself and your purpose in your life. How has it worked for you to numb everything that you feel? Not too good, huh? I didn't think so. And I'd also like to point out that the strength, again, within vulnerability and being open is you having the ability to actually genuinely connect with people, people being able to see you, you being able to see people, and being able to help them, listen to them. That's what life is about. I don't know where we picked up this mentality of living in a world where we keep everything that we're going through to ourselves. We don't feel safe sharing anything. We don't feel safe being honest about what's really going on. And I mean, I know where that came from, but we need to break the cycle, because at the end of the day, people are suffering and they're doing it silently. When we could be creating community, we could be actually genuinely here to help one another out. And that's what life is about, to hear people out, to be able to express yourself, to share ideas, to listen to different perspectives, to get a different point of view other than your own, and how you were raised and how you grew up, to travel the world, right? And again, see how those perspectives and the joys of being vulnerable and what people really deem as life, what people really deem as important, and what matters in life. We have turned into a people where we're only an entertainment people, and we only seek validation from people who don't even know themselves. But we have to get back to caring, and we have to get back to the importance of vulnerability, the importance of being open and honest, the importance of being able to truly connect with others and truly connect with ourselves, so that we can get to the root of why we're here. That's what life is about. That's why vulnerability is so important. And that's why we have to cease and dead the myths about vulnerability, that it makes us weak. Because knowing what you feel, why you feel it, again, gets you closer to who you are, and get you closer to self-awareness of how you show up in the world, how other people may perceive you, and not to say that you care about those things to where it alters who you are and how you are, but you're aware of it so that 9 times out of 10, most things don't catch you off guard, or 9 times out of 10, if something happens, you can see the correlation. I know everybody is not the same. I know this is hard for some people. This is literally a foreign language for our people, but it's worth it. Vulnerability is the truth. Vulnerability is needed. We need to be vulnerable so that we connect deeper with ourselves and we connect deeper with the people and community around us. That's why we're here. We are not a team of one. You are not self made. At the end of the day, we need people, we need help, we need an ear to listen to. And we don't need jealousy. We don't need selfishness. We don't need every man out for themselves. We need to be able to come to somebody when we need it. And we will all need it at some point. And I think that goes back to my topic on entitlement, because some people feel as though they don't need to be vulnerable, or they only need to be vulnerable in certain settings because they're above being vulnerable in a community setting, or they'll never need community. And that's so wrong. That's so wrong. If you really think of the essence of life, that is so wrong. We have a privilege of not being right now, God forbid, in a country where war is actively happening, right? And our only focus is survival. That's one of the most vulnerable states, because you're just worried about, how am I going to keep breath in my body? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? How am I going to get my next meal? How am I going to not die today? That's what we need to reconnect to. Truly being vulnerable to the point where we're able to reach a hand out, extend a hand out, not look for anything back, and know that it's all done in good faith. Vulnerability is important. The characteristics of a vulnerable person is being open and honest and being willing. Strive for vulnerability more this week. I love you. Thank you so much for tapping in. Next week, we're talking about self awareness. Can't wait to see you there. I love you. Timeless Talks with Telly. See you next week.